And
Tell me a little bit about what the foundation does.
Yeah, it was interesting. You know, so what had happened was I had a photograph on my wall. My brother, Greg Johnson, one of my heroes, he had given me a book called A Day in the Life of Africa. And on this book, you know, was maybe 100 photographs taken on the same day all across the continent. Yeah. And one of the photographs he had framed for me, which was about 4 or 5 musicians in Guguletu Township, South Africa, playing in front of a shack. And these guys had so much soul in this photograph. I mean, if ever there were real guys, it was these guys. And they, in the header in the photograph said, "One of the most dangerous places in South Africa finds solace through backyard jazz."
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember putting that photo on my wall.
Yeah.
And I remember telling the crew, my friends and I, like, listen, that's where we're going.
Yep.
We're going to find that. This isn't a picnic. You know what I mean? We're going to find that. So I do some research and I find out the guy, the bass player, was the leader of the band. His name was Pokey Klaas.
Pokey?
Pokey Klaas. Yes. So that's all I knew about him. And I knew that he was in Guguletu, South Africa, which is sort of near Cape Town, 20 minutes away. So sure enough, a year later, we decide to go through the townships of South Africa. And I'm down there with my friends, and we would ask musicians, anybody know Pokey? And would always get a strange look of no. One day, we're deciding to go to eat at a restaurant, and we hear music playing down the street. And we say, well, guys, honestly, we better go that way. Forget this restaurant. We go down there, and there's a group of musicians called Joe and the Ganja Muffins performing on the street in South Africa, Johnny Be Good. Oh, yeah. And I remember it was awesome with a kazoo.
It gets better, buddy.
Yeah, so it was an amazing experience anyway. And we're watching it, and at the end of the song, my music producing partner, Enzo, he says to Joe, "Hey, you ever heard of Pokey?" And Joe lights up and he says, "Pokey? He's my best friend."
Yo.
I said, "Are you kidding me?" So he says, "Listen, let's go out tomorrow and meet Pokey." And so we get in a van with cameras and we go out there. And you got to remember, this guy's been on my wall for years. So to me, he's one of my heroes, but he has no idea who I am. So we go through, and I remember the life-changing experience because we're going from Cape Town, a beautiful city, through a million shacks. And I had never felt more pain, more sort of sorrow for, wow, how could somebody have so much compared to so little? I'd never seen it so close together. I mean, it was absolute nothing to so much here and so little there. Anyway, we get to Pokey's house, and we get out of the van, and he walks outside. And here we are, you know, he must have thought he'd won the lottery or something, because here are all these white guys with cameras, and he has no idea who we are. But I had, you know, him on my wall, so I run up to him to give him a big hug. He's freaked out. He's jumping back. I'm jumping in. It was a really awkward moment. I said, "Oh, my God, that's right. You don't know who we are or what we're doing." I pull out the iPod video. Now, that gave me a chance to at least buy a few moments. He's going to now watch this. So he turns it on, and he's watching it and getting really excited. And I say, "Hey, while you're doing that, I'm going to look through your backyard." And I walk into the backyard, and it was as if I'd walked into my own personal hell. I'd never seen something so sad, so broken down, and so full of sorrow. And a lot of that was because they're little tiny shacks with mothers and little children, both suffering from disease, from starvation, from famine, from so much negativity. And I remember thinking, wow, this is probably not a very good place to record music. So, but Pokey wasn't having that. I mean, he had seen Stand By Me. I come back, he's on the phone with all his buddies, calling all his musicians to come over and jam. And the women had come out of the little shack saying to us, "No cameras, get out of here," basically. And I said, "Okay, look, we're going to humbly just leave. But before I do, I want to give $100 or whatever to each little home to make something better than I found it today. That's
Good.
it.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to leave."
Yeah.
But Pokey sort of became this middle thing. We're like, "No way you're leaving. Like, we are staying and we are playing on that song no matter what." And I remember him pulling out like a broken bass, and everything was broken. I mean, the entire township was broken. And he starts bringing over his friends, and they start to perform a song. And I will never forget that moment, because it was essentially like an exorcism. in the sense that all the negativity flew away. The women that were once very protective of their children come out and all start to sing. And the little children come out and start to dance. And I'm watching this like, wow, the poorest place I'd ever been with more soul than anything I'd ever seen. So that's gotta mean something, right? And some of the poorest places come some of the greatest art. And it out of necessity. But I just watched this transformation from awful to beautiful. And the only thing that changed it was the music. And so I said to Pokey, listen, I gotta do something. Now that's in the exact same spot of where he played the upright bass on the Stand By Me video. In that exact spot, I said, we need to do something, what can we do? He said, man, give our kids here a chance. Help us build a music school. Give some hope to these kids because they don't want violence, they don't want drugs, they don't want this desperation. If they had a choice, they'll take it. And I said, man, I believe you. So about a year later, Whitney and myself with all our friends showed up with shovels and we built the very first Playing for Change music school in that exact spot.
Ntonga Music School is redressing some of the imbalances that the community has been going through. It will assist us in making sure that we have musicians in this community.
Is bringing hope and the future and a vision for the young kids that also want to follow in our steps in becoming musicians. Now there's a school where they can go and learn.
We equip them with musical skills so that they find something that will take away from all the temptations that one finds in the townships.
And it was the most amazing thing to watch. The collection of, post-apartheid township South Africa, whites and blacks with shovels, with concrete trucks building something, and now today, that was the home of the very first Playing for Change music school. And the great thing about it is Pokey Klaas. It sounds like a funny name for an African, right? Well, they had taken away his real last name during apartheid. And his grandfather's last name was Ntonga. So what we did is we brought it back and we created the Ntonga Playing for Change music school to give the legacy of his real, history moving forward. And since then, we have built 7 music schools around the world.
Wow.
And it's really just the beginning. But it just goes to show the power of, listen, you give people a chance, most of the time they're going to take it. And the other great thing that I learned is that giving is getting. I mean, people live in this myth that there's some difference. But it's the exact same thing. I mean, you give something to somebody like that and you see what they give you back. You cannot buy it in a store. So we may as well accept that that's the way it is and try to be a part of it because it feeds you and you feed it. And together, you guys, we manifest something. And so the idea here is, not just make a bunch of musicians come together and make songs and make money and try to be famous. It's about integrity from the very beginning all the way through and let that create something. And one of my greatest friends who I met through Jackson Browne is Keb Mo. And he's one of my heroes, one of my favorite people in the world. And he said to me, Mark, the important thing is to get up in the morning and let the inspiration take care of itself. And that really has sort of been really our guide with this thing, you know what I mean? Let it take care of itself. Give a kid a chance. And you don't know what's going to happen, but that's not important. What's important is that the chance is there, And so the Playing for Change Foundation is essentially at the heart of what this project is, just like the music. They're both door openers for people to see a way that we can raise the consciousness of the human race. And they work together. And it's only because of society that I have to separate them between for-profits and non-profits and whatnot. But the energy is the same. You always need both in order to succeed in the modern world with a global conscience.
How do you spell Ntonga? Phonetically or?
Ntonga. 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 So Ntonga.
Ntonga.
Ntonga. Yes.
To the Ntonga family.
Yeah. Thank you.
Stop for a moment.
Thank you. You have the greatest energy to speak to in the world.
Oh gosh, I'm just sharing the light.
No, but I'm just saying.
We are dancing the light.
Yeah.
We're going to pick it up from there.
Okay.
I'm going to make this segment a little bit more conversational and interactive.
Okay.
I want to do one more question about picking it up with you having now set up the 7 schools. And since we are rolling, I'll just pick it up organically as opposed to tell you what I'm going to ask.
Okay.
So now Playing for Change has taken some of the revenue from this work and created 7 schools. Tell us a little bit about what goes on in the schools. Who goes to the schools? Where are the schools? What's taught in the schools? What do they look like?
Right. Well, I described a little bit about the first one.
Yes.
The Ntonga Music School in Guguletu, South Africa. That was our flagship. That was the beginning. Now we decided, what would be great would be to create the most interactive movement based on music, and that movement will have a for-profit and a non-profit component. But I want to offer people a way to see the change we're making in the world, to actually see a human connection on the other side. So instead of saying well, why should I help kids in Africa? I'm never going to see them. But if you do see them, now comes a new question within your character and in your choices of your life. Well, now what are you going to do? Now that you've seen them, you've seen their love, their positivity. So our goal was to sort of build music schools owned and operated by the community for the community, but then with a greater vision of connecting them all together in real time so that kids in South Africa can meet kids in Asia. They can learn about each other through the internet, photographs, interviews with each other, perform music. But then there's another level to that, which is the audience watching. If I want to build a school or buy a part of a guitar for a child in a school and I get to see them play that, well, now I'm getting to see the change I'm making in the world, and I'm getting something that is not for sale in the marketplace. This is a real human connection. So as we traveled after Guguletu, we sort of had the intention of, let's see what do the people need and how can we help facilitate it, whatever it might be.